Top lineup is back, baby.
Ayo, ayo.
Episode number 47.
Hell yeah.
Another special interview, another good interview. We have Max Greenfield joining us today. He is the pitching coach for Santa Barbara City College. He has some playing history. He worked for the Nationals. Just all around smart baseball guy. Lots of knowledge. This is one that we barely scratched the surface on.
Yeah, we're for sure gonna have to bring him on a second go around. And believe me, once you listen to this whole episode, you're gonna know why, and you're gonna be excited to talk, just hear us talk about the second one.
We want you to listen to every single episode in its entirety. But
yes.
For sure, this one, you really need to stay
you got to
all the way till the end. So please make sure you listen to this entire episode. It's a meaty one. We haven't had too much meat lately, but get ready. Some barbecue is coming up. Without further ado, here's that interview. All right, welcome Max Greenfield to the podcast, Santa Barbara Community College pitching coach. Welcome on.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. Happy to be here.
So tell us a little bit about your baseball story. What got you into the sport? What'd you play? What position, etc.?
Well, being a pitching coach, I think it's going to be a little obvious what position I played at one point in time.
Hey, you never know. You could be an outfielder.
I was actually. I was.
See?
I was a two-way guy. But growing up, that was just called baseball player. Now I guess there's a fancy name for it. But when you grew up, it was just you're a baseball player. So I grew up in Northern California. My dad is from New York. He was born and raised in Albany, went to college in the Bronx, raised me a Yankee fan. And so growing up, we watched a lot of games together and everything. I remember it was 2004 and I was growing up, and I just remember when the Yankees blew that game in game 4, right? I remember, it'll be fine. And now I just don't even talk about 2004. But one of the best memories of my life in terms of baseball was, watching the Yankees win the 2009 World Series with my dad, because I was born in 1997. So I didn't really watch those first few of my life because I'm a baby. I was barely holding food in my mouth. So, but my dad really inspired my love of baseball and everything. And then I played up until my senior year of high school. And then between my junior year and my senior year, between the end of junior and the start of the spring season of my senior year, I dislocated my shoulder. My left one 4 times and my right one twice.
Wow.
And so that was just a sign that it's probably not in the cards. And I had some offers from, Division I schools and community colleges and stuff like that. And, it's not to, I hate the phrase, I play a little ball in my day. It was pretty good. It's I was okay enough to have the opportunity to be recruited. And that was a fun opportunity. But, I knew that my playing days were probably numbered. So I just pitched my last year. And, I didn't want to give up being around baseball. I knew going into college, I was like, I'm really good at this. I really like it. And if I could have a career in this, that'd be a lot of fun. So I went to the University of Arizona. I graduated in 3.5 years with a degree in business economics. I did some baseball stuff over there. And then I went to work for a baseball analytics company called Sports Info Solutions. They at the time they did just baseball and football analytics. Now they do basketball analytics, and they have a sports betting site and everything. They're extremely well run, as they keep increasing the pay of the job that I worked there every year, which is just a good sign that people don't have to struggle like I did. But it's also damn, really couldn't have done it while I was there too. But it's okay. It's okay. It's fine. Right? I'm not bitter or anything. So I worked there, and then, at this time, I really thought I was going to work in a front office and everything. That's what I wanted. And I think every kid who can't play the game, right, envisions themselves I can just be a GM, right? And obviously, some people are very fortunate enough to do that, and some people can live out that dream. But as we are sort of seeing, it requires way more intelligence than probably ever before to get those kinds of jobs. And I am relatively smart. I have a college degree that says so, I guess. But, I'm not Ivy League smart and stuff like that. And I also I think there is, in our lockout right now, we are feeling the tension between the owners and the players and everything. And I think people sort of misrepresent how front offices feel. I remember, I'm not going to say who or anything, but I was talking to one of the people when I worked at the Nationals after SIS, I worked there. And they were saying if it were up to me, I would have given Bryce Harper anything he wanted. He's the best player I've ever seen in my life. Like, why wouldn't I want him on my team? Right. And so there's always a difference, right? The front office may always be like, pay the player, who cares, right? And I think there is that difference. And there's also like at times where it's your job to not pay them, right? Like that's your job. There are people who work when there are arbitration cases that their whole job, and that's how like Kim Ang got really famous, right? Was she was winning arbitration cases for her teams. And like, I just don't want to do that. Like, I just thought about like how bad that would make me feel, like I'm helping a billionaire stay a billionaire. And I just can't do that. Like, the more I thought about it, the more it made me feel bad. So, I didn't get, COVID struck and everything. This was 2020. So it shortened my time with the Nationals anyway. And in hindsight, that was a good thing because I don't know if I wanted to be in a front office anymore. Like I was questioning it and stuff. I didn't get brought back. So then I worked at a baseball training facility. There's places like Driveline and Florida Baseball Ranch and all these other places and stuff like that. And I worked at one like that. And I was like, I used to coach a little bit after high school. I liked it. I refound that I liked it again. I worked purely with pitchers. I don't work with hitters at all. And I'm not going to try. Like, I'm good with the pitching stuff. I've been trained on it, taking courses on it. I'm not even going to touch a hitter. If they're like, hey, how do I like improve my swing? I'm just going to point them in a different direction. Go talk to somebody else. I'm a pitching coach. Like, don't worry about it. And, after that, I was kind of like, I've been doing this I worked there for 5-6 months or so. And then I was kind of like, what if I try to get back into it, like with the school or something like that? Just, whether I stay local or anything like that. And, Santa Barbara City College posted a job and I was just like, yeah, what the heck? Why not? Like apply for it. Didn't expect to get it. I had big league experience with the Nationals a little bit. And then I only had like 5 to 7 months at a facility. Right. So I didn't have a lot of experience. Didn't expect to get it, but then I did. And, it was a whirlwind getting down here, everything, but now I'm here. We're getting ready. Our first game is 2 weeks from Thursday and I'm really excited to get going, and God, it's a lot of fun being around the game.
Yeah. And I mean, what a story would have we're going to talk about the Nationals piece too. That's exciting in itself, but like, as becoming a coach for Santa Barbara Community College, right? City College. What would you say just going in? What's that philosophy? What does that philosophy look like for the team? And then when going in, being that pitching coach, what is your philosophy?
Yeah, that's a good question, especially coming from a training facility where you're very individualized. Going from that to a team aspect was a big jump. At the facility, I could work with guys one-on-one and be very, very minute, down to the detail, telling them exactly what they needed to do, how they needed to rotate, how they needed to, what they needed to work on, where they're not staying stacked and stuff like that. When you're working with a team, you don't have that time to be like super individualized with each guy. And, you try your best, right? When you're there, you give 100% effort to each guy that you have. But instead, you're trying to instill ideas in them. And, the ideas that we have in terms of mechanics are focusing on hip hinges, focusing on, lead leg block, and focusing on, arm path and stuff like that. Things that keep them healthy, basically. And then we have drills and plyo drills and long toss implementation, throwing programs and everything like that. But my philosophy as a pitching coach in terms of, when you're out there and you execute and then other stuff, when they're out there and they're in the game, my philosophy is always just throw as many strikes as you possibly can. If one team throws more strikes than the other, especially in college baseball, generally speaking, that team's going to win. Like, it's just the truth. If you're pounding the zone, you're not walking guys, you're limiting the damage as you can as a pitcher, then you're probably doing your job. And what I tell them is always, if you miss a spot, take a step, breathe, and go back into the next one. And that's sort of our philosophy as a pit. I have another pitching coach with me, and our philosophy as a staff is always just, what's the next one? Get the next one. We have a phrase, and it's super easy. It's just next pitch, which is whatever happens on the previous one doesn't matter. Just go get the next one. And we try to instill the ideas of, make sure you're breathing a lot. It helps calm you down. Visualize what you want the pitch to do with each pitch. Don't just be out there throwing randomly, right? And so that helps some guys. Other guys, they need more than that. But our philosophy is generally always just try to attack, get ahead, hard in, soft away, soft in if you need to. Like, whatever works for you as a pitcher is, generally speaking, fine by me. I think there's these ideas of like every guy has to execute like this. I remember the Pirates used to like have an organizational philosophy of all their guys had to throw sinkers. That's terrible. Like, don't obviously it didn't work.
Yeah.
And B, you don't mold guys into what you think works. You mold guys into the best version of themselves. So whatever works for them, you try to build off that. One guy we have is very much a north-south. He throws really hard and he struggles with locating in and out. That's fine. We can build around a game plan around that. Another guy, he's not throwing as hard, but he can execute to certain spots and certain counts and can throw multiple pitches for strikes in situations. And that's good too. So we build our plans around that. And then, obviously we make adjustments to their throwing programs around that as well, because not everybody is the same. If everybody was the same, this job would be super easy, right? They wouldn't be hiring, guys from Driveline all the time who are super innovative, because they wouldn't need to. There wouldn't need to be any work done, but it's not. So they did. And here we are.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love especially that you really go in on what a pitcher's strengths are. I think a lot of times we're looking for, the next sinker ball pitcher or someone who could throw 98. It's not everyone's going to do that. Let's face it, right? And so, just owning in on what they do good. I mean, you look at someone like Kyle Hendricks, right? Kyle Hendricks doesn't throw hard. He knows
It'd be
how
nice
to locate.
if he did, though, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, imagine
he would be the best pitcher ever if he could.
He would be.
Seriously.
He would be. Very, very true. So, somebody like Kyle Hendricks, he's not going to blow a fastball right past you, up in the zone. That's just not his game. But he'll throw that sinker. It might only be 84 miles per hour, but he'll get you out with it.
Yeah.
So,
and building around that, right? Every guy's, listen, as you said, not everybody's going to throw like, Clay Holmes demon sinkers, right? That are 98 miles an hour and have 20 inches of run. That just doesn't happen, right? Logan Webb isn't appearing out of nowhere and throwing a changeup 40% of the time out of nowhere and shutting down the Dodgers for 15 innings in the playoffs. That doesn't happen, right? Instead, you have cases where, like we saw with Atlanta this year when they won the World Series, Tyler Matzik being set up in the right positions, right? And using their bullpen in the right ways, throwing Ian Anderson for the amount that they did and working around that, building their game plans for each pitcher and building what works, because that's just the way you have to go about it. Atlanta won the World Series because they played matchups the entire postseason with their bullpen and their starters, and it worked. And that's the way you kind of have to do it, right? I can't expect Max Fried, though he was probably capable of it if he was not as tired, because it's the end of the year, of going 8 innings in game 6. I mean, he pitched great, right? But that's not necessarily a realistic expectation when you're in November, right? These guys are tired. Mm-hmm. So understanding that and maximizing what you have with what they can give you and understanding how to get the most out of them, that's your entire job. And it's a lot of fun. It's very hard at times, though, because as with everything, some people are more receptive to it than others, and that's just what you have to live with.
Yeah, and just looking at it too, there are going to be at times those special projects, right? Maybe the guy, 3/4 is not very successful. You make him I don't know, like a submarine pitcher. You never know. Like there are project players like that, right?
We've had a guy who over the top wasn't working out, so we dropped him down to like a sidearm low 3/4 slot, and he pitched a lot better that way. Sometimes that's what it takes. Obviously big drastic changes are never what you want to do, right? You're always hoping you can make minute changes and stuff like that, and that works. Sometimes it doesn't, though, and you do have to make that big drastic change. Sometimes you do have to change their arm path or their arm slot, or just change completely how they move. It's prefer to not do that, obviously, because it's a hard change, especially quickly. But that's just sometimes that's the job. Is that you just have to make those big changes, but knowing when to do that and knowing when not to do that, those are, that's what makes great coaches versus good coaches. I mean, that's just, I'm still learning that because I've only been doing this for a year, and I'm sure if you go and talk to Scott Emerson, he probably knows, right? He's been a pitching coach with the A's for a long time. I think he's the only guy coming back to the staff other than Mark Kotsay. So, but it's just that's the tough part, but it's also the fun part too. So
you kind of briefly touched it. You don't have the luxury of focusing in on one guy, one specific thing that you want to have them get better at. So kind of what are your duties, with your whole group? What is your goal with your entire pitching staff?
I think my mindset is always make them better, right? If they made them a little bit better or a lot better, that's the goal, right? I want every single player I work with to leave feeling like that we accomplished something together. And if that goal is just, hey, I'm now throwing 86 instead of 83, fine, perfectly fine. If that goal is, hey, I want to be a guy who turns into a Division I, Saturday night starter, we can try and work on that too, right? Like it just depends on the guy, but I want every single person I work with to feel like that we were communicating well enough to where we achieved our goals together. And that requires, a lot of honesty, right? They have to be honest with me about what's not working on my end, right? And you're constantly evaluating yourself as a coach, right? You want to make sure that the drills that you have and the way you convince them of what you're saying, right, is always on it. And then it takes honesty on my end to them of like what they're good at and what they're bad at. I'm not just going to tell them straight up, oh, like you suck at this. Like that doesn't benefit anybody, right? It just doesn't benefit me to tell a pitcher like, oh yeah, you suck, you shouldn't be pitching, right? Like that's at a certain point, yeah, sure, we all get the call that we're not going to play anymore, but like I'm not going to be the one that gives them that call in that moment, right? Instead, it's more beneficial of like saying, hey, like you're really good at these things, but we need to work on X, Y, and Z. Here's how we're going to accomplish that. And if they buy into it, hopefully it works. And it's not always a guarantee, but hopefully it works. And then if they don't, then you try and convince them. And if they continue to push back, then they continue to push back. And hopefully eventually they learn to agree with you, or you just change up your philosophy, you change up the drills, whatever you got to do, to make them better is what you got to do. I personally believe, like we were in a recruiting meeting earlier, or the other pitching coach said it, and I agree with it. Everything is tailored to you, right? Everything that we do should be tailored to the pitcher. Everything that, every hitting coach does should be tailored to the hitter that they work with. So if you're not a fan of something, tell us and we'll change it. And that goes back to that honesty. It's like, we really need them to be honest about it. And some people are and some people aren't. And, I guess always being hyper aware of the people who aren't. So that way, you can just go out there and say, hey man, like, are you like, we know that you're not enjoying this. We can tell, just let us know and we can make changes. But yeah, I mean, that's my goal, is make every single person better to the best of my ability. And hopefully we do that. And I have confidence that in our staff this year that we are achieving that goal.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And, for you, you kind of touched on that recruiting piece, right? I'm just kind of curious, especially with, with just the traveling, right? Due to COVID, like how has that affected all of this, the whole program's just ability to scout players and recruit them? Like how has that been?
Recruiting has changed a lot just in the last like 2-3 years. Just because, Rob Friedman, Pitching Ninja, he started this Twitter account called Flat Ground.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you can go on Twitter or Instagram and stuff, and you can see these high school kids from all over the place that you never would have seen before. Right. And boom, there's video, and you see something that you like, and you can go, for me, since I'm a community college, if they're in California, I can go talk to them immediately and like get feedback and stuff like that. And I've already done that. We had a recruiting meeting yesterday with a kid from California. And like I found him on Twitter. Video was good. We really liked it. We're going to try and recruit the kid. COVID has made recruiting, going in person and stuff like that a little bit more difficult. As a community college, right? It's tough to go recruit more than just seniors because, if they're a junior or a sophomore or something like that, and you're recruiting them, chances that they stay committed to you, a junior college is, relatively low, right? If something better comes around, they're going to take it, and they should 100%. So, we're always just kind of like looking for good seniors who, for whatever reason, aren't going to make it to a D2 or a D1 or anything like that, whether it be grades or the talent's good, but not good enough yet, or, just family stuff, right? Like you have no idea what it could be. We haven't gone out in person too much. At least I haven't gone out in person at all, other than like a few local stuff. But, I don't anticipate us going out into like deeper LA or anything like that, or down to San Diego or anything, just because it's just not feasible. And also just like the events, there's like perfect game events and stuff like that you can go to and everything like that. It's just different now. Recruiting is just so much different than it was, even when I was in high school and I was getting recruited. Like it's just a different animal, in the sense of like, because of that social media aspect, that you can always just go out there and you post video, and if it's good, somebody's going to notice, right? Like you can self-advertise and everything. You can tag schools, you can tag coaches and stuff. Like I have a coaching Twitter account. I hope people tag me and stuff like that, and I'll see it. Like that, it works. Like it really does. I mean, there was the guy who posted, I remember a couple of years ago, like the first year of the flat ground app, this dude who was throwing 98 miles an hour, and he was tag the flat ground app. He tagged teams and stuff like that. Next thing you know, he got a contract with like the Rangers or something like a week later. When you throw 100 miles an hour, it's pretty easy. But like, it's that's all it takes is like you show one video and it's like, oh man, this kid's a junior in high school and he's throwing 88 miles an hour. Probably means he's going to turn into a 90 mile an hour, which probably means he can turn into a 93 mile an hour, which means he could probably turn into a 95 mile an hour. And then all of a sudden it's just like, it oozes with potential. And, it's on the same time, they also know that. And so you have to sort of deal with the repercussions of like, kids are, I don't want to say like they're smarter than they were before, but they know how to advertise better than people did before. And that's super advantageous to them. Which is great. Like I'm all for that. Like 100%, I'm all for that. If it makes my job harder, so what? Whatever. Being able to play the game as long as you can is great. So recruiting is different than I would just say it's different. I wouldn't say it's more difficult. I wouldn't say it's easier. It's just different. It's a new animal, especially because of COVID. Because I can't remember last time we went out as like anybody on the staff, other than like one person went out to anything, just because we can't. There hasn't been anything to go to.
Yeah. And with that said, just for the younger listeners that do listen to our podcast, for you, when you are looking at these videos, right, if you go, you look at anybody that's tagging flat ground pitching, typically what are you looking for in a pitcher?
The first thing that's always going to stand out is velo. People are going to tell you all the time, it's like, oh, just try and locate your fastball. No, velo is always going to get you there. Always. I promise you. You want to get to the next level? Throw harder, right? That's just the truth. People may hate it and whatever or not, but the truth is, you want to be a Division I arm, you got, especially if you're right-handed, you got to throw 93 miles an hour. Like that's just the truth. It's just the way the game's going, and I can't really blame them. Like it's effective. So the first thing that always stands out is velocity. Then, if they don't have the velocity, we're looking for a solid foundation of mechanics, usually something that's like, okay, the velocity is not there, but I can see a way to develop it and develop it quickly. Then, we're looking at GPA. Obviously, we want to make sure that, if the GPA is not good, then like we're trying to figure out, okay, is it because they're lazy, or is it because they're, just not a good student, right? And then the second thing that we, try to notice outside of velo, mechanics, and GPA is, frequency of posting, right? Like, okay, the kid says he's a 2022 uncommitted and he posts once every 3 months. It's like, okay, kid's not very, trying to get, recruited or something like that, right? at least for me, like personally speaking, the frequency of which you post, I'd rather somebody say you post too much than you post too little. If you're posting, your stat line after every start or something like that, I'm really okay with that. Like, I think that's fine. You got video up of every appearance you have with your line and everything, what your velo was. Honestly, that's good. So that way we know how you're progressing, if you're falling or something like that. And because if you're not posting a lot, it just says to us that you don't necessarily care a lot about it. And listen, some people have a lot of talent, but they play baseball and they like it, but they don't love it. And it can reflect, and right. That's perfectly fine. Like, I'm not trying to dog on that or anything like that. But we do look, personally, I look for people on the frequency that they're posting. But the number one thing is always velo. Throw hard, you'll get noticed. If you're in nowhere in the middle of Nebraska, right, but you throw 93 miles an hour, I promise you somebody will come find you. You post one video of you're 17 years old and you throw 93 miles an hour, and you post a video on Twitter and you tag Flatground saying, I throw 93 miles an hour. You're going to get a lot of messages in your DMs very quickly. Like, people are going to come find you. But if you're throwing 82 miles an hour and you're 17 years old, you're not going to get as many messages, right? Some people might find you and everything like that. And that's fine. Like, there's still the potential to turn you into something good. Like, it just depends on what we're working with, but always throw hard. You're going to go far. I promise.
Yeah. And that's like another curiosity, because there are a good handful of kids who are, mid 80s, right? And one might call them maybe a thumber, right? Maybe they're thumbers, right? So like, what would be your advice to them, right? Obviously, the velocity is not there. That's not too sexy, right? But like, what can they do to get noticed? Because I will say, like, within our area, obviously there are those kids who have the ability to throw 90, but I would say a good handful of kids within our area specifically are mid 80s at bare minimum.
Just say it, Soto. You couldn't hit 90. Just say it.
Oh, hell no.
Just
I'll
throw
be
it
honest
out
with you.
there.
Hey, I'm 26. I'm not gonna go play, community college. I mean, I aged out, bro. I can't do that. but
trust me, I couldn't throw 90 either. Like, obviously the easiest answer is, we'll just throw harder, right? Yep. Like, that's the easiest answer, and that's generally speaking, that's going to be the truth. I would say if you're a mid, if you're right-handed, right? Let me specify. If you're a lefty and you throw mid 80s, that's fine. That's going to get you noticed, because people will take lower velo at left-handed, because left-handed is just different, right? Goal is always to be different. I'll say this a lot as a pitching coach. If you are different, you are good, most likely. So if you're a mid 80s right-handed arm, one of the biggest things that you can do is be open to redshirting, right? If you are even at a community college, and I know that sounds like such a weird thing, redshirting at a community college or, a JUCO, but it can be to your benefit. The other pitching coach on our staff, he redshirted his freshman year at Santa Barbara City College. By the time he left, he was a lefty throwing mid 80s, and he went to Bowling Green. Like, he went transferred to a Division I school, had a history of a decent program. Like, it worked out. So, it doesn't take a lot. And the thing is, depending on where you go, I like to think that we're very on top of what our redshirt's going to do. But you could go to a program where their redshirt throwing program is really intense, and they put you through velo programs, so that way you're going to throw harder, right? Because our feeling is, if you are redshirting, it's generally speaking because you need to work on something, and usually it's just getting stronger. So, if you're in that mid 80s arm, I would say be open to redshirting, and train. If you have a lifting program, you should be mimicking it as a pitcher, not just be, doing all this stuff to make yourself look good and stuff like that. And that's fine. Again, if you want to have big arms and look good without a shirt on, completely understand. I get it, really do. But it's not really beneficial to pitching, right? So, the quickest way is you be open to redshirting, throw harder, right? Train smarter, right? To throw harder, you need to train smarter. And that's training as a pitcher, not training as a person who just wants to look good. There's so much out there about how we train as pitchers now. And that's what when I was working at the facility, I, really opened my eyes to like how, you can really change your workout routine to mimic the shapes that you create as a pitcher, and that makes it stronger. So, you're not just working out your arms, you're working out the muscles in your back and the muscles in your shoulder that you don't necessarily touch if you're just doing a normal workout, but you do a lot when you're throwing, and that makes it stronger and makes it more elastic. And that way, you're looser and healthier too, is the other thing. So those are my 3 big things. Be open to redshirting, throw harder, train smarter. If you do all 3 of those things, you'll turn in from a mid-80s arm to hopefully a 90-mile-an-hour arm, and that gets you to the next level. But all of that comes with the most important thing, which I said earlier, is desire. You got to want to do it. If you don't want to do it, this isn't for you. And that's fine. Let me preface it by saying that's okay. Like, baseball is not for everybody. Sports in general is not for everybody. And it's really okay to admit that. Like, I completely understand. If you look at it and say, that just seems like too much, I'd recommend just go get a good degree, have a fun paying job, have a good life, right? Like, there's really nothing wrong with that. And we tell some guys in our program sometimes, like, hey, there's nothing stopping you from still having a good life after this and doing something beyond baseball. Because eventually we all stop playing, and making sure that you have a good life is far more important than how long you play baseball. So that's what I would say.
Start a podcast.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey.
That's where we got. Soto, you still have a chance. I know you just invested into that fake ID, so you might make it, bud. You might make it. There's still a chance. This is one of the questions that our followers submitted. So if you were to give a freshman a cheat sheet in order to excel in your program, what would be on that cheat sheet?
Ooh, that's a good question. A freshman to excel. I mean, I guess that depends on what their definition of excel is. Like, are they excelling to the point that we want them to pitch this year? Are they excelling and they're, we still want them to redshirt because it's still for their benefit and whatnot. So my first question to you is, what is their definition of excel? My second question would be, I guess it's not really a question. I would say, depending on their answer, if they want to pitch for us this year, it would be, be very diligent in your catch play and your plyo routine. So for those who are listening who don't know what a plyo routine is, there are plyo balls, which are weighted balls, basically, that are not seamed or anything like that. And they are both heavier and lighter. And we have a routine of drills that we do with our guys that mimic the way they move on the mound to help improve the deficiencies on the mound, while also strengthening and keeping their arm healthy. These things are very important in warming up, but also very important in general, because it's a very good and quick way to gain velocity. And then in catch play, which is just normal play, catch, whatever you want to call it. What's important with catch play is that that's the area where you work out, your deficiencies, and every throw that you have there has to matter, has to have an intent behind it. We try to tell guys, like, even if you're at, 60 feet, right? Say to yourself, I want to stay behind this fastball. I want to see it come out of my hand good and stay in the air. I want to make sure it doesn't tail, or whatever your goal is. Or, if you're at 110 feet, okay, I want to make sure that my arm is really coming through on this one. I want to feel myself rotate on my back hip more, right? Whatever your goal is, every single throw of your catch play should have something behind it, an intent behind it. Those are the 2 quickest way to get noticed and to become a better pitcher. Especially in our program, we really emphasize those 2 things a lot, because it's just like, you're only going to throw off a mound, if you're a starter once a week, if you're a bullpen guy twice a week, right? Like, it's just the truth. Most of your throwing does not come on a mound. So making sure that the stuff that is not on the mound is really sharp, is really good, is going to make the stuff on the mound that much better. It's going to translate. And we see it all the time. The guys who take their catch play super seriously, who are, going through their drills and going through their constraints and everything very seriously, are better guys, or are the guys who rise up quickly. And so that's the biggest way to do it. The other way I'd say is, don't walk anybody. If you don't walk anybody, I promise you will pitch for us. Because God, we really hate walks. And we were actually really good at it in the fall. I think, man, we only had 1 game where we had over 4 walks. So, we really stress, don't walk people. So if you're a freshman coming into the SBCC pitching program, I would tell you, you do those two things well and you don't walk guys. When you do get to pitch, you will be successful. You will excel in our program.
Find the strike zone. Always a great tip of advice.
Always find the strike zone.
So for our younger athletes, our younger pitchers, what exercises would you recommend for them to basically recover and avoid injury, lengthen their future?
So I'm going to answer this by ways that might surprise some people. They need to throw more. So if you want to pitch for a while, you want to be pitching a lot, you have to throw a lot. You can take breaks and stuff like that, dial it back a little bit. But I remember Max Scherzer made comments in the offseason about like he felt that the Dodgers had mismanaged his arm a little bit by trying to rest him. It actually tightened up his arm and he needed to throw more. And I know some people are like, that doesn't seem right. And I actually thought it was 100% correct. Like, because the thing is, imagine your arm is like a muscle, right? How do you get a muscle stronger? You exercise more, you work out more, and you do all that stuff more, right? And that strengthens up. Why would throwing be any different, right? The more you do it, the stronger your arm should become, right? The more elastic it gets, the more stretched out and everything like that. So the first thing I would say is, we tell our guys they should be throwing 6 days a week, right? They get, 6 days a week of throwing. If you're on a different sort of program, you can go 5 days a week or anything, but they need to be playing catch in some sort of capacity every day or as much as they can, right? So that's my first thing for younger athletes. Throw is play catch as much as you can. The other thing I'd say is, as you start getting older, don't be afraid to throw a football too in your catch play. So you can start with a football, work on the spiraling, everything, and you get that feel of something heavier. So the whole point behind, like, as I said, with plyo balls and everything is feeling something heavier will make your arm stronger because it'll teach you how to move properly without injuring it. Throwing a football does that same thing when you're young. I know a good person to follow would be Devin Morgan on Twitter. He runs Driveline's Youth Academy and everything like that. And he has a lot of good stuff and a lot of good information about youth baseball and everything and how to train and stuff like that. He could definitely answer those questions better than I could, but based off what I've seen, it's play catch a lot. It's never too early to have a plyo routine or anything like that, but throw a football and catch play too. Like, don't it be, when you're super young, I'm not sure, but like for guys who are turning like 10, 11 years old, throwing a football and catch play is a really good introduction to throwing something heavier, right? When I was at a facility, we did have some 12-year-olds that would train and like they would throw plyo balls and everything like that. And then the final thing I would say, and just in regards to throwing, when it comes to weightlifting and stuff, that's a better question for other people. Like I have some knowledge of that stuff, but I don't want to speak on something I'm not super knowledgeable about. Try and take like 1 day a week where all you do is just try and throw as hard as you possibly can. I always tell people what I said at the facility was, I'm joking, used to say when guys were doing their velo days and stuff, I would just be like, hey, have you ever tried just like throwing harder? And usually it works. It's something like all it takes is just a little bit more effort. And that's all it takes, because what people don't understand is that when you try and throw hard, your body actually finds a way to move properly. It figures it out, which just sounds crazy, that if you dial it back, you're actually doing yourself a disservice. If you dial it up, your body figures it out. So take, if you're an 11-year-old kid, once a week, just put everything you can into like 10 throws, just off a mound or in catch play or anything like that. Just throw that ball as hard as you can for like 10 throws. And that'll help, because then you'll understand how your body needs to move and everything. And if you're a parent listening or anything like that, film it too, like film it and show a coach like, hey, here's my kid doing this. What do you see? And I really have no problem looking at the video and stuff like that. So if anybody's listening and wants me to look at their kid's video or anything of how they're moving, but I really recommend that. Playing catch 5 to 6 days a week, throwing something like a football in their catch play, and then just trying to throw as hard as you can at least once a week.
I have to send you some videos of me pitching.
Oh yeah,
good old 63. You know what I mean?
Soto's making a comeback.
If I could throw 63 nowadays, I'd be thrilled. There's nothing left in this
Oh
arm.
man, I tried. I was hurting. Like I was like, man, I should.
Oh, it
I should have
hurts.
prepped my. Yeah,
It
it
hurts
hurt
so much.
so
It's
bad.
like,
So bad.
oh.
I was the dude that would pitch, 150, pitches in a tournament, right? And I'm like, that looking back, I'm like, damn, like
That's a bad idea.
that's a bad idea. Yeah. Because I didn't benefit from it. And that actually leads to the next question, because in the Bay Area, we're very heavy on travel ball. Like Little League is almost not even, it doesn't even exist really in the Bay Area now, which is pretty crazy. So these kids are playing almost year round. So what are your thoughts on like travel ball, when it comes to pitching and even just playing right year round? What would be your opinion on that?
This is tough, right? I want to say like, oh, you should play multiple sports and stuff like that as much as you can. Personally, like, I think that's good because pitchers are athletes, right? And so if you're an athlete and you're a pitcher, chances are you're going to be more successful, right? And there's some guys who are like not super athletic, but can pitch, right? It happens like that. But generally speaking, the better athlete you are, the more likely you are to be successful as a pitcher. So, my first thing is like, play what you like to play, right? Like if you don't like basketball, you don't have to play basketball. If you don't like football, you don't have to play football, right? If you just like baseball and you just want to play baseball, that's fine. My thoughts on travel ball and everything is that the biggest damage that we're seeing in pitching development as a whole comes from travel ball because they burn, as you just said, you throw like 150 pitches in a weekend. That's not an uncommon thing. I'd actually say that's a common thing.
Yeah.
And that's bad because now you're wrecking a 12-year-old kid's future before it even really shapes up in front of them. So, if you're a travel ball coach listening to this, limit your kids, like have a lot of pitchers, first of all. So that way they all pitch. If they're not all good, who cares? They're 12. The Milwaukee
right?
Brewers are not out there watching your 12-year-old play. I'm not coming to watch your 12-year-old play to try and recruit him. I'm not going to see him for another 6 years. Why would I do that? Let the kids have fun, right? If they're bad, they're bad. Who cares? If they're good, they're good. They're 12. Let them have fun. So that's the biggest thing is if you have a travel ball team, make sure your kid's not throwing more than 60 to 70 pitches in a weekend. But I don't remember what the limit is at a certain age or anything like that, but I'm pretty sure it's around 65 pitches or so, right? And it's like, if you have 65 pitches, you're supposed to rest for 3 or 4 days or something like that. That's 100% true. There are guidelines behind that. And I remember, what's his name? He runs Baseball America, not Cahill, whatever his name is. But the guy who runs Baseball America, he tweeted about the updating of like the pitch guidelines and stuff like that at youth baseball tournaments and at travel ball tournaments and everything like that. Because there was research that like 96% of coaches were violating those rules. And it was like something absurd. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it makes sense, but it's like also that's terrible. So, I don't think it's bad to play travel ball. Like, I mean, I sounds like I'm ragging on it. In a way, I kind of am. But like, it's not a bad thing to play travel ball. But if you're a coach, please limit it. Like, do not be like, oh, there's 52 weeks in a year. We're going to play 48 tournaments. Like, that's absurd. Like, that's way too much. Play, 15 to 20 tournaments a year. Have fun at practices and stuff like that. Get the kids in shape, ready to play. Make sure that they're having fun more than anything. I hate hearing stories of, oh yeah, that kid was really good at 14, but he was so burned out by the time he turned 15 because he had played travel ball so much and his coaches had worn him down. That breaks my heart. I hate hearing stuff like that. So don't do stuff like that. Let the kids have fun. Only throw them once if they're going to throw 65 pitches. If you want to throw one kid 25 pitches and then let them come back 2 days later, fine. That's fine. But no kid should be throwing more than like 80 pitches in a weekend. It just shouldn't happen that way. When you get to high school and stuff like that, you're not going to be doing stuff like that. You throw 80 pitches, you're now down for a week. That's how it's going to work at college level too. That's how it works in the pros.
Right? Exactly.
80 pitches, you're gone for 4 days for sure. Maybe even 5. You know why they don't pitch on 3 days rest? Because it's bad for you. There's science that says it is not good for you. So it should not be, oh, I just threw 70 pitches yesterday, but yeah, I can throw another 50 today.
A
No,
little ibuprofen, just a little bit of
just give me some
ibuprofen. Good.
ibuprofen.
Little tiger balm.
I'll be good. Like, no, don't do that. Listen, there's a reason that Sean Mania only pitches 1 time a week, basically, because pitching takes a lot out of you when you throw 90 something pitches. So do not throw your kid 120 pitches in a weekend. Don't do it. Just don't do it. That's my rant about youth baseball. Just whatever you think you're doing, don't. Probably wrong.
Yeah. And players, this is something that I had to learn myself. Is like, be honest with yourself. Like, I get it. You want to win a championship, you want to get that trophy.
Say something.
Be honest. Because that was something I'm like, my arm's hurting, but you know what? If I put 600 milligrams, 1,000 milligrams of ibuprofen, like, I'm good, right? Like, that was that mindset for the longest time. That's how it always was. And then now I'm looking back, I'm like, damn, like, if I don't take care of myself now at age 26, I'm not going to be able to throw my kids if I have kids, right?
Yeah.
I won't be able to throw. I won't be able to do things. I love baseball. I still, do it, right? I still try to play Sunday league and do softball and stuff like that. But if I don't got an arm, what the hell am I good for? I can't hit for shit. I was a PO.
Exactly. And it's, it's not, again, it's sort of going back to like the recruiting thing, how it's just different now. The culture around it is different. When I was growing up, and I'm a little bit younger than you are, Luis. The idea that you admitted that you were hurting made it seem like you were soft, right? And nobody ever wanted to do that as an athlete. Nobody ever wanted to admit they were soft as an athlete. Oh, Derek Jeter plays through injuries all the time, right? And stuff like that. Nobody ever wanted to admit that. But now I think culture has shifted a little bit, especially like we see it in pro sports. Guys are very open when they're hurting. Right. The idea to like fight on injuries and stuff like that, they've sort of realized at the big league level, right, that saying that you're hurting is actually more beneficial to your team, both in the short run and in the long run, because that means you're not going to miss time. Right. It doesn't make sense. Oh, like, my back's been kind of tweaked for a few days, but I'll just play through it. Next thing you know, it's like, you got an oblique injury and you're out for 5 months. Right. You shouldn't be doing stuff like that. Instead, it's like, hey, my back's been kind of like tweaking me. I felt it yesterday, kind of like tighten up a little bit. All right, pull you out of the lineup, go get some work done with the, physical therapist and everything like that, get an evaluation, see what they say. And, if they say, hey, like take a few days off, you take a few days off, right? Like that. On the big league level, we've gotten a lot better, but on the youth level, it's still like, like, oh, I got to grind it out. I got to, show that I'm tough and everything like that. I would say or I'm a man. I would say you're a tougher athlete to admit that you're not okay, both physically and mentally, if you can admit that stuff, because it takes a lot. And I tell people this all the time. It takes so much bravery to admit that something is wrong, right? That's always the first step. It's like, something is wrong. I remember we had an athlete who was pitching through like a bit of an arm thing. And I was like, so you went out and pitched without telling me. And I said, like, dude, I don't care how good you are. Like, if you're our number one guy, or you're not even going to be, or you're the last guy in the red shirt kind of deal, whatever it is, you need to tell me when you're hurting, because we are not doing our job as coaches if you get hurt, right? If all of you get hurt because you're not telling us, that means you can't trust us. And that's bad, right? So I'd rather, especially in the fall, this happened in the fall. And I was like, it's the fall. Nobody cares, right? This is all about development. Just tell me that you're hurting and we'll move forward in that. And it's no different if you're a kid. So if you're a kid and you're, going into youth baseball and stuff, and something hurts when you're 11 years old, it's not going to magically get better when you're 17 if you don't take care of it. It's just not how it works. If it hurts now, take care of it now, so that way it doesn't hurt at 17. I broke my back when I was like 12, 13 years old. I have long-term damage from it. Totally accepted it. I got a bunch of injuries. It's whatever. It's my own fault. Because I didn't, this is a good example. I didn't admit I was hurting. I just kept trying to play through it, and I just kept making it worse. And now I have permanent back damage. So don't do what I did, right? I'm saying all this stuff, and like, if you want to think I'm a hypocrite for it, perfectly fine. Like, I understand that. I accept that fate. But I'm telling you from experience, this shit ain't fun. So like, if you're hurting, say something right away. Tell somebody, like, oh, my elbow hurts. I remember I was watching a youth baseball game. This kid was throwing curveballs at 9 years old. pissed me off. It was like, curveball, 9 years old, really? Something like that. We just learn to throw as hard as you can with a fastball. That's fine. That's all you need to do. And then like he's throwing this curveball all the time. Of course, he has no idea what he's doing. And he's like, Dad, my elbow hurts. And I almost blew a gasket. I was like, of course his elbow hurts. He has no idea what he's doing. You're having him throw curveballs. He's 9 years old. Get out of here. Just get by with a good fastball and you're fine. I tell this kid, I was like, I threw a fastball only until I was 15 years old and I got by. I got guys out. I developed a really good changeup and a pretty good breaking ball as I got older, but you don't need more than like a good fastball to make it until you're in high school. I promise you you'll be okay.
100% agree. And Soto and I kind of talk about this time and time. The whole velocity thing, right? We talk about culture and baseball changing, and velocity is obviously going to get you far, and we all realize that. But what I'm starting to notice is velocity is starting to matter at such a young age. I've seen videos of 7-8-year-olds and it says, oh, they hit 45 today, or whatever it might be. And it's like, at 7 or 8, like I was not worried about how fast. Like I was just trying to throw a strike, right? I wasn't trying to blow up the radar gun. So at what age do you think velocity should really start to matter?
Let me preface it by saying, like, if you're doing that stuff because you want to have fun with your kid and they like seeing those kind of numbers and stuff, that's perfectly fine, right? Like if you're doing it as like it's a fun sort of thing, perfectly fine. But if you're breaking out the radar gun for your 9-year-old kid, I want to say what I said earlier. The New York Yankees ain't coming to watch your goddamn 9-year-old kid. Like they're not even worried about him until maybe he's 7 years older. I promise you. Put the gun away if you're doing it on like it's good to know what he's throwing. No, it's not. He's 9. Like, so that's why I said what I talked about earlier is like learning how to just throw hard. That's what you learn. You don't care what it is. Just learn how to do it. I don't care what the velo is when you're 10 years old. Just learn how to actually do it, right? Learn how to move. Then when you get older, when you start getting close to high school, velo starts to matter a little bit, right? Like depending on where you go to high school and everything like that. You could be playing at some pretty competitive high schools and everything, right? And you want to be able to throw hard. But when you're 10 years old, I don't give a damn how hard it is. Just learn how to do it. If you're doing it again, and I saw this facility was tracking kids' exit velos off their bat and like had like a little competition with it, right? And that's fine because it's fun, right? The kids get to have fun with that and they get to see something cool and talk about something cool. And that's all well and good. But if you're like striving like, oh, you have to hit a 70-mile exit velo, get off your high horse. Like, stop. That's not good. The number one priority as a youth coach should be making sure your kids have fun. And if through that you record velo and stuff just to like keep track of it to make sure that they're having fun, I got no problem with that. I think that can be really fun for the kid. But if you're doing it as like, oh, I want to keep track of their progression so that way one day when what's this? When San Francisco University comes to scout the kid, nobody from San Francisco.
I got recordings from when he was 8.
Yeah.
When he was 8, I got some recording here for you.
You want video from when he was 12? No, not even a little bit. So if you're young, like when you turn 12 or 13, I'd say when you turn 13, that's when you can start like fully tracking velo in terms of like monitoring it for development, right? But when you're before then, I don't care. It really doesn't matter. Even when you're a freshman in high school, it relatively speaking doesn't really matter that much. As long as you're still having fun and you learned what it takes to throw hard, then we can start measuring it. The first step is always learning what it takes to throw hard. And that is what I talked about earlier, is like, just take those 10 throws, throw them as hard as you can, and that will get you far. You never need to record it before you turn like 13, 14 years old. I promise you. But when you do start recording it, you're going to be shocked at how hard you're throwing because you've been doing it for so long. But don't do it sooner than that. You're ridiculous if you do.
Oh yeah, no, it's crazy. It's crazy how youth baseball how it's been. Really,
it's I've, like on the one hand, I'm very grateful for all the development we've had science-wise and technology-wise, because it's made everything so much better as a coach in terms of like so much more information and everything like that. And you can make players better than ever was before. It also has the downfall of like in youth baseball, people are like, oh, let's strive for those things when we're 8 years old. And it's like, again, Devin Morgan, who people should follow on Twitter. He's much better with this stuff than I am. He preaches all the time. Make sure the kids are having fun. That is always the first and primary goal, is making sure the kids have fun. They track all that stuff at Driveline because they're Driveline and they have all that stuff, right? Because they think it's fun for the kids to see that stuff. They don't actually like worry about it in terms of like development and stuff like that. They're just like, hey, kid, you hit this ball 80 miles an hour. Isn't that kind of cool? Yeah, it's super cool. Like, that's super fun. But you mean like, oh, you only hit it 72. You didn't hit your PR today.
Right? Exactly.
No way.
So funny. So since we're still on that subject of pitching, of course, right? Just curious, if you could build a pitcher, right, with specific traits and take it from anyone from Major League Baseball, if you could just build the perfect pitcher, what would it be? And I'll give you a couple examples. Like, do you want the big dick energy Scherzer, right? Do you want the composure from DeGrom? Do you want that Chapman fastball, right? Or that calm, cool, collective Hendricks? Like, what would be the perfect pitcher for you?
God, I love this question. I think this is just such a fun question because you get so many different perspectives on things and you learn things that you would never think about, right? When getting some of the answers. So I guess the first thing that I would want is that Scherzer confidence. I would want that Scherzer confidence in a pitcher. Like if somebody's just like, my stuff's better than yours all the time, I do want that confidence. Then I want the sort of workhorse ability of a Zach Wheeler or a Sandy Alcantara of the Marlins. Because, there's a lot of discussions on the role of starting pitching and how like Corbin Burns won the Cy Young versus Zach Wheeler. And I'm not here to rehash all that and everything. But objectively speaking, you are more beneficial to your team if you can throw deeper into games. It's just true. Like it's always true. So having somebody like a Zach Wheeler or something like that who can work deeper into games. So that ability. So I guess the health of Zach Wheeler, right? I guess that's how I would phrase it. Somebody who's durable like that. Then pure stuff wise, I'd probably say, I'd probably take like Garrett Cole's fastball, right? Then I take a Clay Holmes sinker, again, 98 miles an hour with 20 inches of run. What's not to like about that?
Right.
Then I would probably take like a Kyle Hendricks changeup, but give it the velo, not like a 81 mile an hour changeup with a 99 mile an hour fastball. That's too much of a variance in that. It has to match the speed of the fastball, but like a Kyle Hendricks changeup. Or maybe I'll take Devin Williams changeup just because that pitch is just
the airbender.
That thing's so nasty. Is it even a changeup? Like he just doesn't. I remember listening to an interview with him with CC Sabathia and Ryan Rucco and R2C2, and he was just like, yeah, I don't really call it anything. Like I just kind of throw it, and I'm like, good for you, man. Nobody knows how it works either. He doesn't know how it works. The chances that we're gonna understand how it works, very low. But I'll take his changeup, and then I'll take a Charlie Morton curveball, and I'll take let's see, I got Garrett Cole's fastball, Clay Holmes sinker, Devin Williams changeup, and Charlie Morton's curveball. Do I even need a slider? Nah, I'll be fine. That would be my repertoire. That would be my repertoire right there. And then I think the other thing I would want is, while I have Scherzer's confidence, I want Mariano Rivera's stoicism. Totally inflappable. Nothing could phase the man or anything like that. Remain dead straight on his goal the whole time. So I want that sort of confidence that Max Scherzer has, but I want it to be invisible in the sense of Mariano Rivera. So I guess it would be fairly similar to like Jacob deGrom or something like that, but like even more so, even more confidence than that, which I don't know how you have more confidence than the best pitcher on the planet, but maybe you do. So that would be, and then I guess the intangible would be the guy who gets better when there are runners on. I don't know what that would. I don't remember. There was some pitcher this year who, like, when they put runners on base, they got Shohei Ohtani. I would want that ability that Shohei Ohtani had, that when runners were in scoring position, he had the lowest WOBA allowed this year. So I would love to have that ability too. I'm pretty sure that pitcher would have a 0.0 ERA.
Right, exactly.
So that's what I want, is all of those characteristics combined into one pitcher. Give me Garrett Cole's fastball, Clay Holmes sinker, Devin Williams changeup, Charlie Morton curveball, Max Scherzer's confidence, Zach Wheeler's durability, with Mariano Rivera's stoicism, and Shohei Ohtani's clutchness, I guess.
0 ERA confirmed.
There's no way.
And to clarify, do you want Garrett Cole's fastball with spider tack or without?
They're both good. So
I know.
I'll take either one. That was such a, like, obviously, the spider tack, the sticky stuff situation, it's really just because Major League Baseball didn't want to take the blame for the lack of offense because they changed the ball, but that's a different story for another time. But it was so funny how many people kept, as it's in a joking manner like you did, but people would bring it up seriously. And I was like, he struck out 15 guys in Anaheim after the crackdown, right? He threw a shutout in Houston in a 1-0 game after the crackdown. Like, there was a span of like 8 or 9 starts after the crackdown. Dude had a sub-2 ERA, a sub-2 FIP, and struck out like 40% of hitters while walking 5% of hitters. There was a stretch where he was the best pitcher in baseball, pitching like on one of the best stretches we had ever seen. And people were just like, "Oh, he's a spider tack merchant." Like, shut up. Like, it's just pay attention. I get it. Like, it was super easy, and not to defend the guy, he didn't handle himself super well when it came out either.
Horrendous interview.
That interview where he's like, "I'm not sure about the question." I was like, "Oh, Jesus, Garrett, how did you not know this was going to happen?" Like, that was painful. But like, yeah, anytime a fan comes up and is like, "Oh, he was a spider tack merchant," I was like, tell that to Anaheim. I'm sure they'd love to hear that.
Everyone uses something.
Listen,
it's the reality of it.
It's just the truth. It's like, if you got to the big league level, you used something, and something could be as simple as just you used your sweat and you threw some rosin on there. That's still using something. That's still something. They banned it, which is horrible, by the way. But they were just like, like, who cares? The league gave them no reason not to do it, by the way. Like, people got mad that, listen, I'm fine with them banning spider tack. Clear scientific proof that there's a serious advantage with using that. Fine with that. Whatever. Good with that. But the league gave them no reason not to do it because they weren't enforcing it. Mm-hmm. Nobody ever checked it for anything. If you're trying to be the best that you are, it's just like, again, in the 90s, right? Nobody stopped them from using steroids. So why wouldn't you do it? Right. And now Bud Selig gets into the Hall of Fame. And if you did steroids one time, you have no shot of getting into the Hall of Fame. It's completely ridiculous. The double standards are hilarious just because the games always work against the players. And I'm glad I'm not trying to be a part of that anymore.
Oh, man. We talk about this very, very often. It's so obvious. And
it's so obvious that
it's ridiculous.
Just to speak on the Hall of Fame a little bit, because I keep track. Ryan Thibodeau makes it super easy, not Mr. Tibbs. Mm-hmm. So it's super fun. And I'm of the belief of, like, Scott Rowland, in my opinion, is the most deserving person on the ballot and everything like that. There's literally nothing bad you can say about the guy. If you're an anti-PED person, you're ridiculous. But also, like, if you're an anti-PED person, fine, whatever. Then you have no reason to hold anything against Scott Rowland. He never did PEDs. Mm-hmm. If you're just like, "Oh, I'm a small hall guy." Guy's got 70 career WAR. He's like 8 Gold Gloves, one of the best defensive third basemen ever. He's like 8th all time in wins above average or something like that, which is taking basically WAR and comparing it to players in his era and everything like that. There's no reason not to vote for the guy. And yet here we are on his 4th try. He's not going to get in, but he's probably going to get in eventually, which is good. Mm-hmm. But it's like, it really reflects the whole process of how bad it is. It's just like, here's this dude, and we use the character clause and improperly, in my opinion, to hold guys out But here's this guy who everyone says is quite nice. This seems like a standout dude, and he was a standout player, and they're still like, nah, not gonna do it. Meanwhile, before all the horrible stuff came out about him, Omar Vizquel was probably going to get in before him, which is mind-blowing to me because Omar Vizquel is nowhere near as good as Scott Rowland is. And if you think Vizquel was a Hall of Famer, listen, standards of the Hall of Fame or whatever, it's subjective. And I'm not like, I wouldn't vote for him anyway. Like, he basically stood out at shortstop for 20 years and played relatively good defense, but he was a horrible hitter. So just, I wouldn't vote for him. That's just my personal view. Now all the stuff came out and I definitely wouldn't vote for him, but it's just inconsistency.
And he still has like 10% just public votes. He has like 10%, and then
he'll stay on.
You look at Torrey Hunter, he's
not going to make it.
It's ridiculous. Like, Torrey Hunter, most loved guy, one of the best outfielders of all time. I mean, freaking he's fucking, he should be in it, but at least be considered, at least give him an opportunity to stay on the ballot. He might not be on the ballot. Like, it's crazy.
In my mock ballot, I was debating including. I voted. I don't. So my personal ruling is like, if you've been accused of domestic violence or sexual assault or anything like that, I don't vote for you, just because, in my view, if you're in the Hall of Fame, you're supposed to represent the sport on the field and off the field in the best light. So there are a lot of guys who have been accused, and I just don't vote for those guys. And this is my personal view on it. You don't have to agree with it or anything like that. A lot of people don't, and I completely understand that. Like, if all that matters to you is the quality of your play, I completely get it. But like, that wipes out Bonds, Clemens, Jones, Sheffield, Sosa, Ramirez, like right off the bat, all those guys gone. Not going to vote for Schilling because I like to think I'm not a scummy person. So like, that wipes out a lot of people, but I still try and vote for 10 because if I were a voter, I'd have 10 votes. And I feel like I would be obligated to use all 10. Right. So like, I was debating on like Mark Teixeira or Joe Nathan. Right. And it's like, they're both going to fall off. Right. Like, I think they both have 1 or 2 votes. And it's kind of a shame because I feel like, we have guys who fall off on the first ballot all the time. Like, Lance Berkman fell off on the first ballot a few years ago. And that seems like a real shame. I feel like that dude, if we looked back, we'd probably say that guy's a Hall of Famer.
One of the best switch hitters. One of the best switch hitters
ever. And like, we do that all the time. Like, Kenny Lofton. We talk about Omar Vizquel. Kenny Lofton played right behind Omar Vizquel for a long time. And people went, yeah, Omar Vizquel is a Hall of Famer, not the guy who's like speedy as all hell in center field, arguably like the second or third best leadoff hitter we've ever seen.
Actually got on base.
Yeah.
Right.
Dude was really good. And he fell off the ballot on his first try. And so like, I always think about that of like, the idea of strategic voting, right? Like, what was it? 2 years ago was Bobby Abreu's first year on the ballot. And I'm very happy he stayed on because I think he's a Hall of Famer. Like, I really do. I know people are going to be like, really? Bobby Abreu made the All-Star game like 3 times, something like that. And here's the thing. It's like, when we start thinking about accolades, it's just a popularity contest, right? Bobby Abreu, yeah, he wasn't a flashy player or anything, but he was really good because he got on base, like what, 39% of the time? That's really damn good. He stole 30 bases, 300 bases, hit like 250 to 300 home runs. That stuff is worthy of induction, in my opinion. But, it's so funny. It's like picking hairs between which fringe guys you vote for and which fringe guys you don't. And so like, I would vote for Mark Burley, Tim Hudson, and Andy Pettit. I believe Pettit's going to get in eventually on a veterans committee or something like that. But like, Burley and Hudson are probably falling off. I feel like I'd vote for them over somebody like Torrey Hunter because we have a lot of outfielders, and Hunter was really good and he deserves some recognition, and hopefully down the line he gets it. But my feeling is if we ignore Tim Hudson and Mark Burley, then we miss out on an entire era of pitching, right? We're going to look back and be like, wow, we're going to let in like 3 or 4 pitchers from this era. Like, we're going to let in, CC Sabathia is going to come up and he'll get in, right? Because he's very well liked.
First ballot, easy.
3,000 strikeouts, left-handed pitcher, very noticeable name and everything like that too. Then, Kershaw will get in, Verlander will get in, Scherzer will get in, Greinke will probably get in too. But then beyond that, you start thinking about it and you're like, wow, we're going to be pretty light on starting pitching starting in like 1990 to like now, right? Like, we might be pretty light on starting pitching. And so I was kind of like thinking, because when Johan Santana didn't, when he fell off the ballot the first time, I was like, we're going to be really light on starting pitching. Like looking back, Kevin Brown didn't get that much support. And I'm like, man, that guy was really good. And he got like very little support. So I'd vote for people like Burley and Hudson to like emphasize the point that we need to like reevaluate how we think about starting pitching, because people have this, concept and this idea of it, of, oh, starting pitchers work really deep in the games and work really deep a lot or something like that. And listen, Mark Burley did all that. He just didn't do it for a very long time, but he routinely led the league in complete games every year. And I remember one of my favorite Mark Burley stats of all time is outside of his like brief rookie stint, he only had one season where he was under 200 innings. And that was his last one where he was 0.2 shy. So he was really close. So, I think about stuff like that a lot too. It's like how we evaluate starting pitching. And there's other guys like, again, I vote for somebody like Mark Teixeira just to stay on, just because I think like, that combination of offense and defense at first base is worthy of a heavier look of if it's Hall of Fame worthy. He probably would stay on if he never got hurt, right? And that's a lot of people, right? It's easy to say, oh, if they never got hurt, what would happen? But, like, that's definitely somebody like Mark Teixeira is like, if he had stayed healthy, he's probably walking into the Hall of Fame, right? Like, that's the truth. And there are a lot of guys like that. If Andrew Jones has 3 good years after he turns 30, regardless of the allegations against him, that dude's probably already in the Hall of Fame. But instead, he was really good from 20 to 30. And then people are just like, well, he did nothing after 30, which, again, in my opinion, purely on the basis of his play, I would not vote for him. But he's a Hall of Famer on the field. So I'd vote for him in that regard. I would not vote for him in general because, again, do something terrible, I wouldn't vote for you. But I don't know. The Hall of Fame discussion, I just think is so weird. Today, Dan Shaughnessy only voted for Jeff Kent. Really? Like, just Jeff. Again, in my opinion, you cannot argue against Scott Rowland, in my opinion. Like, there's just no argument against him. And so any ballot that doesn't have him, I'm just like, why not? Right. I used to actually ask writers that, and some would engage, some would answer me. But most of them, they'd ignore it. But like, eventually he'll get in. But you submitting a blank ballot or a Jeff Kent only ballot, get out of here. Like, you're really going to sit there and tell me on this ballot that has, in my opinion, like 16 to 17 guys who deserve a heavy look, like a heavy look into the Hall of Fame, that none of them are in? Get out of here. You're ridiculous. So dumb.
It's a crazy topic because, and we could be here all night on this. You start talking
sure.
Writers putting in that, no votes. Well, what are you going to do, right? You're going to find out who this random writer from Iowa is, and you're going to click on their bio, and you're going to go to whatever journal they write for, newspaper, whatever. And guess what? You just helped him get another paycheck. So he wins.
It's so like when they post, you see those, a lot of people who submit blank ballots don't say anything. They just submit a blank ballot. Some people do. And it's like you run into the situation you're talking about. If I click on it, I'm supporting them. But at the same time, like, I got to know what atrocious logic is behind it, right?
100%.
I want to know. Like, I've avoided it, but I have, like, people have, like, I'd be like, who wants to click on this? And I have a group chat of people, and like one of them will like, I'll do it, right? Like, I'll represent all 20 of us. So that way they only get one person instead of 20 people's clicks, right? But like, you do want to know, like, who was it? I think it was like Phil Rogers or something like that, who voted for like 3 people, and he posted his column, and the column's just filled with just a bunch of bogus, right? Just horrible arguments and everything like that. And I'm not trying to say like baseball writers are bad at their job or anything like that. There's a lot of them. Some of them are not going to be good. Others are going to be great. And listen, like, everybody's got a different view on the Hall of Fame. As I said, like, it's just different. But when I have to hear the argument of just, and I think one writer the other day who ended up voting for steroid people that I saw, he's like, we have no idea who did it beforehand. Like, there's no way to know. Cheating's been going on in the game forever. Like, before steroids, there were people cheating all the time. Like, it's been around. And if you try to act like there are people in the Hall of Fame who didn't do steroids, you're just lying to yourself. Mike Piazza admitted it. He admitted he did steroids.
And
like
Ivan Rodriguez.
Yeah, Ivan Rodriguez did it. Jeff Bagwell did it. Like, we already put 3 dudes in. what's like, if your line is like, oh, I don't vote for steroid users, I'm okay with the line of like, oh, they got suspended. I'm actually okay with that because like, all right, there was clear punishment for it at that point. You knew the risks and everything like that, and there was like a line. There is a tangible line drawn, or it's a slightly less arbitrary line, I guess. That's fine by me. But if you're just like, I'm going to vote for David Ortiz, who was named in the same report as Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens and that sort of thing. And I get it, it's slightly different with them because they testified and everything. But like, man, why wouldn't you vote for Sheffield then? Like, if you vote for Ortiz, but you don't vote for Sheffield, what's the difference? They're basically the same, right? They have very similar career numbers. It's just one played the field not well, but one played the field and the other didn't. Like, if anything, you should vote for Sheffield over Ortiz because he played the field and Ortiz didn't. Like, they were the same quality, if not better of a hitter. Like, but they don't see it that way. They'll vote for
popularity contest.
And that's 100% true. It's like David Ortiz played for the Red Sox, and not his entire career, but the vast majority of his career, and had a lot of big moments in Boston. And I guess, and the most important thing is that he was nice to the media. Bonds might not be in regardless, but like, if you were nicer to the media, he's probably in. That's partially why Jeff Kent's not in. Media people didn't like Jeff Kent because Jeff Kent was kind of a dick, but like, that's,
yeah.
Again, it's like partially like, okay, you kind of had it coming because like you were a bit of a dick when you played, but like, it's gonna be fascinating what happens to A-Rod, right? Dude was a complete another bat nuts person when he was a player, right? Like, he was so difficult and huge pain in the neck as a player. As a media analyst, right? Like, he's become more popular and people sort of forgave him for all that stuff. Then they started stop forgiving him when they heard him talk on Sunday Night Baseball, and you're like, oh my God, please stop. So he's a bit polarizing, right? Because it's like, okay, media kind of did like a 180 with him. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does. Like, I think he's already pulling ahead of Manny Ramirez. Now, Manny, again, has other stuff with it too. And A-Rod is arguably one of the 15 greatest players ever. So it's a bit different, right? But it is interesting. Like, it's a popularity contest, and the most important thing about the popularity contest is making sure people like you, which is all the more reason why aren't you voting for Scott Rowland?
Right? He did nothing wrong. Dude did nothing wrong.
Like, that's the thing, is like, we talk about the character clause and PD stuff to like hold it against guys. Billy Wagner didn't do nothing to nobody. Why aren't you voting for Billy Wagner? Like, he's a great closer. Why aren't you voting for Scott Rowland? He seems like a fine dude. I get Andy Pettitte did steroids, but like, dude, he seems like a nice guy. Right? Like, Bobby Abreu didn't hurt nobody. He's just out there playing baseball. He's doing a thing. Why are you hurting him? I don't.
Yeah, it's freaking crazy, man. It's we'll never understand like the logic, and it's and even the logic, and this is my logic. The people are complaining that like, oh, if you're voting for Barry Bonds, then you have to vote for A-Rod. Well, Barry Bonds, this is his last ballot. A-Rod has fucking 10 more, 8 more, whatever ballots before. Like,
that's fine.
Let A-Rod sweat, okay? Let that guy sweat, just like Barry Bonds, just like, Roger Clemens. Let that guy sweat and let him feel the heat. That's what, like, the logic will, like, no, we will never see a perfect. We will never see a perfect ballot. I've yet to see one.
Yeah, it's my view is like, when people say, oh, if you vote for Bonds, you have to vote for A-Rod. That's not true. A-Rod got suspended for an entire season, by the way. Like, an entire season he got suspended. It's different. It's a different line. Like, A-Rod clearly, it's not that Bonds didn't violate the rules. He did, because there were rules. Just nobody enforced them, but there were rules. But A-Rod clearly violated rules that were easily defined at that point, that people were enforcing and everything. It's different, right? When you've been suspended, it's different. And as you said, if you don't vote for A-Rod this year, guess what? He's going to be there next year. You can vote for him then. I've already seen writers say, oh yeah, I'm going to vote for A-Rod next year because he's one of the best players I've ever seen. But like, I'm just not going to vote for him on this ballot because I want to vote for these other 10 people, or I don't think he's deserving of a first ballot introduction. I don't think there's a difference between first ballot and like a Hall of Famer. I think it's all the same. You're either a Hall of Famer or you're not. Like, that's my personal view on it. But like, if you want to say like, I'm not voting for A-Rod because he's going to get 9 more chances and there are other people that I want to vote for, I'm good with that. Like, I saw a writer who took off Andrew Jones off his ballot, and I think Todd Helton off his ballot. And he said, I'm going to vote for them next year, but I want to vote for these guys in their 10th years and these first-time guys who might not hang around, but I think deserve second looks or harder looks. I'm really okay with that. Like, I think that's good logic of like, hey, I know these two guys are going to be there next year. They're not falling off the ballot and they're not close to their 10th year. So I'm not hurting them, right? They're going to, with my vote, most likely they're going to get in eventually. But this guy, Sammy Sosa's on his last year and I think he should get in. Joe Nathan deserves a harder look as a closer than, other people. So I'm going to vote for him too. And I don't want, him to lose support. I'm going to vote for Andrew Jones and Todd Helton next year, and they'll be back on my ballot, and it won't matter. I'm really okay with that. Like, personally speaking, I think that makes all the sense in the world of using a strategic vote. But when I have to hear, oh, but if you voted for A-Rod, or if you voted for Bonds, you have to vote for A-Rod, or blah, 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 blah. If you voted for Ortiz, you should vote for A-Rod. No, it's not this. It's not the same thing. It's not like there's a line, like if you don't vote for guys again for like domestic violence and sexual abuse and stuff like that, there's a line where it's like, okay, in my opinion, you have to do it all or nothing. Like, you can't be, oh, I won't vote for Omar Vizquel for what he did, but I'm gonna go vote for Andrew Jones. It's like, well, like they've both been accused of the same thing, so like, what's the difference? And that happens a lot. Like, Omar Vizquel is free fall, right? He's going to lose so much. Yeah, he's probably going to lose like 50 plus votes this year or anything like that. And like, am I here to say that's a good thing or a bad thing? Like, I don't know. I'm not saying anything like that, but it's just like, you see all these people, they'll drop Vizquel, but they'll keep shilling. It's like, really? And I'm not saying one's worse than the other, but it's like, if you think one's bad, shouldn't you think the other is bad? Like, bad enough to take them off your ballot? But they don't. And it just doesn't make sense.
Get it.
You'll never understand. And I'm just, I have my view on it, and that's that.
And it's sorry to step in, Juan, but like, this is why we do these, these types of episodes and podcasts. We have conversations because like everyone has a different perspective, right? And like, just getting that additional insight, and just where your head's at, like it's nice to hear, it's a breath of fresh air for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's just not, again, as I said, that's how I hold like the character clause. First of all, if they got rid of it, I'd be okay with that, because then I don't even have to think about it. And if I were a voter, I don't even know if I'd vote, because does it matter that somebody was a bad person when you're putting them into a sports hall of fame? Does that matter? Should that matter? Honestly, that's a question that's way above my pay grade, and I would not be able to answer. Like, that's just a reflection of morality, and I don't think I'm ready to like go to bed. And that's the way I described it when I wrote out my ballot, and I was telling my friends, I said, I feel good about like one vote on this. The other 9, like, I'm completely torn for either, off the field reasons, or are they a good enough player or anything like that. I feel like good about one vote. Every other player I'd be losing sleep over. And like, there are some writers who take that very seriously and they reflect it, and like, they're very open about the process. I remember he's the Reds beat writer for The Athletic, and I think he's the Baseball Writers Association of America's president, Trent Rosens or something like that. But he wrote a really good column about how this is just tough. It's a tough process, and like, it should be tough, and you should think, and it should be like, you should be thinking about it. And it's, if I were a writer, I would 100% understand where they come from, of like, I don't understand, or I don't know what the right thing to do here is, because I don't either. Like, does it matter? Should it matter? I don't know. It matters to me. And luckily I don't have a vote, so I don't have to say anything beyond that. I can say it matters to me and you got to deal with it.
My rule, and not that my opinion matters, I just really look at what you did on the field.
That's fine.
There's
That's
scumbags
really okay.
already there. When I take my future kids to a museum, it's my job to tell them, hey, this is in the museum because it's history, but you don't want to end up like that, right? When you look at a war museum, and you see these bloody, gory scenes, like, this is history, but that doesn't mean that this is where you need to go, right? This is not your future.
And that's perfectly fine. Like, I think that view on it is perfectly fine. I really have no problem. Like, you're like, I'm going to vote for Andrew Jones, even though I know he did terrible stuff. I keep saying Andrew Jones, and I don't know why. But I guess
he's at home. He's like, what the fuck?
I know. He's listening to this, like, dude, come on,
ears
man. That was the
ringing
worst
right
moment
now.
of my life. Like, move on. All right. But like, I'm gonna vote for Manny Ramirez because Manny Ramirez is one of the best hitters I ever saw in my life. Or I'm gonna vote for Gary Sheffield because he was a great hitter who hit 500 plus home runs, and that's what matters to me. I know he did bad stuff. I'm okay with that. Like, really am, in my opinion. Like, if you're just like, we voted based off of, and this is what one of my friends says, like, we voted based off of what they've done on the field for the entirety of the Hall of Fame's existence. I'm not going to start changing it now, even though like it might eat at me. Like, and I'm perfectly okay with that. Like, it makes all the sense to me. Like, there's no doubt in my mind that Barry Bonds was the best player I've ever seen, like, without a doubt. Anybody who tries to tell you differently, maybe they saw Babe Ruth play. Okay, maybe that's true, but like, Barry Bonds is without a doubt, since Barry Bonds retired, is the best player we've ever seen. And if you want to vote for him because he was the best player you've ever seen, I'm fine with that. Like, without a doubt, he's incredible. I don't give a damn that he did steroids or anything like that. That stuff doesn't matter to me. It might matter to some people, but it doesn't matter to me. Bud Selig's in the Hall of Fame, so clearly baseball has shown you how much they care about PEDs. So if you want to vote for Bonds, fine. If you want to vote for Clemens and because he had that relationship with Mindy McCready and everything like that, but you're still saying that dude was one of the best right-handed pitchers that we've ever seen in the sport. And even though he did steroids, he was still damn good. Again, I got no problem with that. I really don't. Like, it's how you view the off the field stuff is completely one's opinion, and how I don't think it's a reflection of anybody's character or anything like that. Definitely. I would just say, if you apply it once, then you can make, like, I think you can make a special exemption for Schilling because he asked to be taken off. Like, that's fine. Like, that's fine. I also think the difference between Schilling, and I remember I said this last year, was when he was close, I said, I felt like if Schilling had a Hall of Fame speech, he would be spouting the nonsense that he was saying in the Hall of Fame speech. And that's different, right? Yeah. Publicizing your hateful rhetoric that involves, for people who don't want to hear this next part, but it might get graphic, for like lynching journalists and comparing Muslims to Nazis and stuff like that. Like, I personally don't want to hear that. And like, I wouldn't vote for him because I would be afraid that he would promote that stuff in his speech. And that's a fine line to, I think, in my opinion, if you're like, that's different from those other guys, that's fine, because they're not, Gary Sheffield's not going to go out and advocate for hitting women. Like, that's not going to happen. I mean, like, it's just not. So, if you're lying, like, Juan, if you're going to vote for Barry Bonds, but you wouldn't vote for Kurt Schilling, I'm okay with that. I think that's like a very logical thought process. I also would be like, well, I'm going to vote for Kurt Schilling anyway. That's fine. It bothers me, but it's fine. But like, if that's how one views it, I'm not going to disagree. If you consider character at all or don't consider it at all, it's your own view. It's how they misapply it is what bothers me. That's the whole process, I guess. It's just like, it's so misapplied that it bothers me.
Definitely agree. Who would you say your favorite pitcher is of all time?
Of all time? I met Max Scherzer, so it's hard to really argue, because when I was working for the Nationals, he was actually the major leaguer that hung out with us the most in the video room. I was a minor league video intern, so I did a lot of video stuff. And so he hung out with us. So it's really hard to argue against Max Scherzer. But growing up, I tried to imitate Greg Maddux. The old phrase he used to have, doesn't matter how hard you throw, but it does. It's when you throw hard. So I really like Greg Maddux. I also really liked Bob Gibson, the stories I would tell. There's a book with him and Reggie Jackson, rest in peace to Bob Gibson. If you haven't read it, I think it's 60 feet 6 inches. It's just stories from him and Reggie Jackson, and they're just great. And one of my all-time favorites from Reggie Jackson was this guy. Reggie's pitcher just hit a dude, right? So Reggie's coming up the next inning and everything, and he's like, this is so stupid, but baseball used to like plunk guys as a form of retaliation. So no, giving them a free base, you're rewarding them. That doesn't make any sense. But so Reggie comes up and he turns to the catcher and he says, "Now I know that the pitcher's about to hit me right now. I'm not young enough and fast enough to make it out there to him before somebody stops me. But there's nothing stopping me from beating your ass. So if I get hit, I'm coming right for you." Catcher looks up at Reggie, calls time, goes out to talk to the pitcher. They end up just walking Reggie anyway. Never even came close to hitting him, but they were definitely going to. And Reggie told him, he was like, I'm coming for you if I do. So and that talked him out of it. And then I remember Bob Gibson said there was a story in there where he talked about the other side, where this dude was just, they hit a guy and he was just like, oh, so I retaliated, right? Hit the guy again. And then the next time he came up, he was kind of smirking at me that he was going to hit a home run, whatnot. And I think Gibson said he struck him out, and the dude was just like staring him down the whole time. And Gibson's like, I'm just going to do it again. Like, go ahead, you'll get up here again, and I'm just going to strike you out again. And so it was the confidence of Bob Gibson that I always tried to emulate, of like, as I said, my stuff's better than yours and stuff like that. I was not good enough. I was obviously not Bob Gibson. So, but like, I definitely tried to emulate that confidence of like, oh yeah, I'm better than you. Because man, there's very few better than Bob Gibson, but it's hard to say against Scherzer, but I'd probably, any one of those three is really okay.
Awesome. And just to clarify, because you were talking about earlier in the conversation, right? You were growing up, or you were brought up as a Yankees fan. Then you work for the Nationals, right? So like, who is your team?
I'd probably say the Nationals because like I have a lot of friends who still work for them, and like I made some really good relationships. I still follow both teams because my dad's still a Yankee fan and everything like that, right? I still follow both teams. Like I followed them both last year, and the Nationals weren't very good, so it definitely became a lot easier, focusing on like how Kate Cavalli was doing and Cole Henry was coming along and Jackson Clough and their prospects and stuff, especially because I worked with some of those guys. So it was more fun to pay attention to the prospects, especially once which I 100% was thought was the right thing to do, was to sell off the house and everything. Like, farm system was bad. They needed to revamp it very badly. Scherzer was on last year of his deal and everything like that. Trey Turner was never going to be more valuable or anything like that. It made all the sense in the world to make all the trades that they did. And I thought they did really well. But once that happened, it became just like, well, is there any reason to really watch anymore? Is Joe Ross? Oh, he's hurt. So I guess I'll just keep paying attention to Soto. And that's all I did, is like I kind of just watched Juan Soto, which, by the way, also really nice guy. Just really fun to be around. Super nice. He'd come into the video room and laugh it up with the video guy. He would say it in Spanish, and I'm learning Spanish, but I hadn't learned it then yet.
Just nod.
So yeah. So I just nodded and wave, smile and wave, boys, smile and wave. But very nice guy. So I just paid attention to Soto, and then like Yankee fans are just absolutely abysmal as a fan base. Like they're just so trashy. Like it's so bad. They're so annoying and like loud and obnoxious and everything. My dad's like the complete opposite though. He's a Yankees fan, and his one goal every year is, oh yeah, play meaningful games in September. Like, that's such a reasonable ask as a fan. Like, just play competitive games at the end of the season and I'll be happy. Like, geez, and you're a Yankees fan. Like, if you're a fan of a different team, like if you're a Royals fan, that would seem like a reasonable goal, right? It's like, oh, play meaningful games at the end of the year. That means we had a competitive season. If you're a Yankees fan, it's like, oh, championship or bust. If we're not 162-0, it's a failure of a season. And blah, 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 blah. But no, the Yankee fans are so obnoxious, and like watching them melt down throughout the entire year was like, on the one hand, fun. Extremely annoying,
emotional roller coaster. I would imagine.
But on the other hand, so funny. The stuff these people would say would be hysterical. I mean, there was a point where they're like, "Should we trade Judge?" And I'm like, "Bro, why? Like,
he wants to be there. He wants to be there.
He's like, come on. I just want to be a Yankee for life. You guys are still in you're the Yankees. The thing is, like, the Yankees, they're never out of a competitive window. They can just buy their way into it. And like, listen, if you want to argue about like the owners and stuff like that, every owner can spend. And if you think otherwise, I have news to break to you. There's a bridge I would like to sell you, actually, because the owners have been selling it to you your whole life. Every owner could spend like the Dodgers did this last offseason, or this past season, where they've had like a $280 million payroll, or the Mets are about to go to. Every owner can do that. You want to know why? Because they're all goddamn billionaires. Like, they have the money. Anybody who says otherwise is wrong. So in these collective bargaining agreements, if you're ever like, well, the players should just want to play for the love of the game. Shut up. No, they should want to be compensated for their labor. They are,
right?
You are way closer to them than you ever be to the owner. So anyway, yes, every team can spend, and teams that have historically had big payrolls are never out of it. And this idea that Yankee fans were like, we're losing our window with Cole. Oh, please just go sign Carlos Correa and trade for Matt Olson, and you'll be back in your in competitive window that never even went away. You're gonna be fine. These people are ridiculous. Whereas if you're like an A's fan, and you're wearing the hat, and so I feel bad for saying this, but like they're probably gonna trade off this offseason. Like it's probably one.
You're gonna make Juan cry. You're gonna make Juan
so
cry.
I'm actually the A's fan. I'm wearing a Philly shirt, but I'm the actual A's fan.
I'm sorry to tell you this, Juan, but they're probably going to be selling when they come back. And in my opinion, that sucks. It's so bad for the game. It's annoying. There's no reason to trade Matt Chapman and Matt Olson. But it sounds like they're probably going to get dealt when the CBA gets agreed to, which is so dumb. Is it going to suck seeing Matt Olson in pinstripes, even though that from the moment he came up, I remember when he was a rookie, after like 2 games, like, damn, he's going to make a really good Yankee one day. I was like, dude, it's been 2 games. Relax. like, you're not wrong, but like still, like, relax. Like Minaya is probably gone. I'm a huge Frankie Montas guy. I love Frankie Montas. Yeah, the good news is like all these dudes are going to get great returns because they're good and they're like getting on affordable contracts. But like, man, it must be exhausting every 5 years having to go through this. Of like, I don't understand how Rays fans exist. Like,
what do do they exist really? It's just like, hey, I guess there's a baseball game today.
As a fan, I'm more attached to the players than I am the cloth, as they say, right? Or the clothing. And so like, how are you a Rays fan? They've traded every great player they've ever had. Evan Longoria, gone. Chris Archer, gone. David Price, gone. Blake Snell, gone. If they were good, they got traded. And if people are like, well, it's about to be different with Wander Franco. No, it's not. Wander Franco will get traded in like 6-7 years. Like, it's going to happen. Once he starts to earn some serious money, he's gone. Like it's gonna, that contract, why his agent signed it before the CBA, I do not know, because there's an incentive in there that's like, if he, in like the last 3 years of his deal, if he hits top 5 in MVP voting, he makes a certain amount of money, and it's like 20-something million a year. He could have several MVPs before he even gets there. But because of the way that incentive is structured, he may never see any of those bonuses. And it's like, fire your agent, dude. You just got screwed over. On the one hand, like, take the deal because it's a lot of money.
Yeah,
and
that's
like, the way
that's why I pay the respect. Yeah,
it's like it's so hard because the system, as it was currently constructed, which is again a reflection of the agent, because it might not be structured like that by the end of the CBA. Is like when the CBA comes around again, that the Super Twos and stuff like that, the arbitration system, it may dramatically change, which I know is their biggest point of contention in their economic stance. And the agent still said sign the deal. And it's like, why? You could get that deal later. But at the same time, it's also like, I get saying yes, though, because it's a lot of money and it's generational. As the people kept saying, it's generational wealth. Yeah, I get that. And it's so hard to say no to that. Like, you look at Ozzy Albies' extension, which is still to this day the worst contract I've ever seen. I remember when he signed it, I was like, dude, you're a perennial 4.5 win player. What are you doing? You're getting paid nothing. And
right? Seriously,
it's just the same thing. It's the system. And it's like hard to blame people because, like, again, if you're in the front office, your job is to get those contracts, right? Like, that's your job. But at the same time, it's like, how do you not feel so shitty about yourself doing it, right? Like, it's borderline manipulative. Like, you're manipulating Wander Franco into taking that deal because you know in the current system that it's actually not that bad, but also really bad at the same time. And it's like, how do you live with yourself for that? And how are you a Rays fan?
That's how they make their money, man.
I know. That's how they do it. That's how it's. How it all comes back to how do Rays fans exist? Like, how do you become a fan of a team that sells off your favorite player? I remember when they traded Blake Snell, and what's crazy is like they just won 100 games after that. Like, it was nothing. After going to the World Series, they traded off their second best pitcher, and then just said, oh yeah, we're still going to be good. And it's like, it's so maddening because it's like, on the one hand, the Rays are really good for baseball because they push it forward with data, and they prove that a data-driven process can be super successful on
in the regular season.
Straight. In the regular, sure. In the playoffs, it's an entire crapshoot. But like the Dodgers basically took the Rays model and said, let's just give it a really big budget, and said, here, we can take a really good process and now just give it a bunch of money and look at how good that can be, right? But on the other hand, it's really bad for baseball because they don't spend any money, and it's maddening. I could go all day about the Rays.
Yeah, no, we can't. We're probably gonna have to. We're gonna have to do a part 2 of this for sure.
For sure.
And in season, if the mindset changes. So we usually ask this. This is usually our last question, right? We always ask all of our guests. So, Coach Max Greenfield, got a question for you. Why baseball?
I remember somebody asked me like, why baseball? And I said, imagine you're a pitcher and it's the bottom of the 9th and you have the opportunity to close out a World Series. And there's so many things that you're not even thinking about, but that go into it, right? You know, you have an opportunity to win it all and everything like that. And you're trying to zone in on the pitch that you just threw, right? Okay, I just threw this pitch, and how does that set up this one and everything? And so then you watch this guy go through this very complicated motion, and then he just whips out this ball at an unfathomable speed to think about. Like the average person, like think about throwing 98 miles an hour and think about what that takes. Again, coming back to Clay Holmes' sinker, just because I love that pitch so much. I don't even like sinkers that much, but I love that pitch. Or Logan Webb, right? Or Logan Webb's sinker, right? And you think to yourself, how does one do that? And it's in my head, it's just so beautiful. Like, it's just like, it's poetry in motion. It's this science playing out right in front of you in this like very visually appealing, but also scientifically like marvelous way. And, you know, you strike this guy out to win the World Series, and you have all these emotions and everything. And you just did it by doing something that maybe 0.0005% of people on the planet can do. And it's just, and then to think about, you're one of 0.0005% of people, and then there's 0.000005% of people who then take that pitch and blast it over the fence to win their team a World Series, right? And that's just so, like, that's the beauty of it, is that you fail so much, but yet you keep coming back because these human accomplishments are just so amazing that you have to have more. And it's that beauty of coming through, a guy going through his motion on, you know, slinging in a pitch, or this guy setting up in his stance and he takes that step, and then Giancarlo Stanton launches a ball at 120 miles an hour, or Matt Olson uncorks one into, you know, the percussion section out there in right field to win the game. I mean, or even one of the moments that I think about this year was, you know, Trey Mancini in the home run derby, and the beauty of what he went through to come back and just take part in like what oddly was emotional, of like watching him go through all that, and like, man, his life just was so dramatically different. And it's just the beauty in all of it. And that's why it's like, there's just subtle beauty in this game that you can't find anywhere else. You don't get the Trey Mancini stories of battling through cancer to then go hitting the home run derby. You don't get the Eduardo Rodriguez story of having COVID give you a heart defect and you're not even sure if you're going to live, or Freddie Freeman getting COVID and thinking he might die, and then goes and wins the MVP and then leads Atlanta to the World Series in his next year. Or the moment that Ronald Acuna horribly hurts his leg, and instead the Braves rally around and win a World Series without their best player. And it's the beauty of all of that, all those subtle things that add up. And you just can't get that in other sports. It's just not the same. It doesn't work like that for me. You know, maybe it does for other people. Like, I can understand it, but it's the beauty of all the madness and all the science. And inside of it is this like very artistic painting being made, and it's just so pretty. And that's why baseball.
Soto, I think that was the best why baseball answer we've ever got.
Like, I'm about to shed a tear. I'm
gonna run through a wall.
You need another pitcher that throws miles per hour? I'm ready.
And the other thing I want to say about why baseball is Rachel Balkovec just got named the manager of the Yankees low A affiliate, and seeing the progress that we have made, and we have very far to go. But another why baseball is that we are making progress and being able to do these things, and very reflective of society and where we need to be. But why baseball is that it can reflect of everything we want it to be in society, of people from different backgrounds and different, upbringings and everything like that, working together for one common goal and working to make progress on things that 20 years ago seemed unfathomable, but now are a reality. A woman manager in Major League Baseball 20 years ago, you would get laughed at for even considering the idea of having a woman in your front office. Right now, it's common practice. Like the Yankees hired 3 women to their front office this past year. The Astros just named their director of player development. She was a woman. Blue Jays just hired a hitting coach. She's a woman. There are 4 other women hitting coaches in baseball. And the Giants have Alyssa Nagin, who's on their major league staff. Why baseball? Because progress is a good thing, and it's coming. Baseball's 100% trying to move forward with it. And that was like, we talked about it, like one thing I wanted to mention about this. I just wanted to mention that Rachel Balkovec getting that job is such a great thing. And that's why baseball is that we can, unfortunately, some people are terrible, but we can celebrate this unbelievably unique and great accomplishment for a sport in this, again, maddening art painting that is being built, painted, whatever word you want to use, created. That's the word I'm going for. God damn it. And Rachel Balkovec now gets to sort of be a part of that painting of this madness. And it's in a way that makes you kind of like me, kind of emotional of like seeing the progress that we've made and how much further we still have to go, but like putting into sort of the mural of baseball. And now we get to talk about what are we going to go from here? And that's exciting too. That's why baseball is, we're never finished.
I don't know if do I even talk at this point? I mean, you just like, man, I want to frame that whole speech and just smack it right on my wall.
Yeah, I think about baseball a lot. I mean, it's my job, so
yeah, we do too, and absolutely love that. I think you hit everything right on the nail. We're definitely gonna have to bring you back because I think we just scratched season. Yeah, we just scratch the surface.
Our season is done in May, so
okay.
Post May, well, send me another message and I'll let you know, because most likely I'll have some time during the summer.
We might even go down to Santa Barbara, watch a couple games. Honestly,
Santa Barbara City College, baby. We got some dudes. We got some dudes that might go some places. We got some.
Soto's trying to make the team.
Yeah.
Don't tell him he's going to be redshirted. Well, we appreciate having you on here. It was great to pick your brain. Can't wait to have you back. We just appreciate it 100%.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, guys. I had a lot of fun. This was fun.
Sweet. Top lineup out, baby.
Deuces.